So, I don't know about you, but let's just get started. One thing that I have found, as you get older, they say you're supposed to get wiser. And for some people, it works. Okay? I must say that I think I've gotten wiser as I've gotten older. And I realize one thing. As a child, life was a cake walk. As I've gotten older, life has become a lot more difficult. Things don't work the way that they used to. I've gone to the doctor, and I had a trigger thumb. So they fixed that. Well, now I have a trigger finger here, and I have a trigger finger here. And he says, well, we may be able to fix this and may be able to straighten it out. Because I found out now that I can't open jars because I can't grip. And so you're finding out that the bed seems a little bit more comfortable even when you can't sleep in it at night. It's like you still are attached to it in the morning and you don't want to get up. And it's like, nothing is simple anymore. It's really, really difficulty. And then all of a sudden, America has decided to adopt the European style of driving. And that is basically, there is no traffic lights. All intersections now are roundabouts. And the problem is that every once in a while you get in a roundabout, especially if the roundabout is 3 lanes and you're on the inside of the roundabout, you've got to keep going round and round and round we go. And where I come out, nobody knows. And I hope and pray that I'm on the right street, because if not, I'm going to be walking on my feet, right? And I just made that one up, and it all rhymes. The intelligence of my mother, But it is. It's confusing, and life is frustrating. It really is, because you hear people all the time saying, "Hey, can you help me out? I need money." And you find out you're not the only one. We all do. The money that you made last year is not as much to make it this year. You got your utility bills, and they shot through the roof. Why? Because our smart government blew up a pipeline and blamed it on everybody else. It's really crazy, and it's frustrating. Like, you're supposed to help me. We work our whole life to retire. And then when we retire, we got to go back to work, because we found out that the money that we're making is not going to be able to accommodate our life. And especially if you own a house. Because all of a sudden, if you are paying taxes, it goes through the roof. Especially in the state of Ohio. They're raising, in Butler County, they're going to raise it, I think, something like about 20 to 26% or something like that. And so it's just stupid. And so many times, I know this thing keeps dropping. That's what happens. If I can keep it in one spot. If not, I'm going to have to hold one. Do what? To it, yeah, that'll hold it. But to begin with this, I want to ask you a question. And that question is this: what do you know about solitary confinement? Now, Harold works in the prison, so he knows I don't think you work in solitary confinement now, right? I think you do transport. Is that what you do? Or? Okay, so you heard me right. I want to know, what do you know about solitary confinement? You see, because none of us have never been put in solitary confinement. And solitary confinement is also sometimes called administrative segregation. And it's used in the prisons to kind of basically where you may have some people that might have mental problems, or they've got disciplined, unruly, dangerous inmates. But in 2012, there was an article published by the American Psychological Association that reported this: deprived of normal human interaction, many segregated prisoners reportedly suffer from mental health problems, including anxiety, panic, insomnia, paranoia, aggression, and depression. Now, these are prisoners that were put in solitary confinement. And all of a sudden, they start having all types of mental health problems because they're not interacting with one another. So, what we don't realize is that so much of what we do as human beings is rooted in social contact with one another. And so, I don't think that we need research to tell us this at all. So we're starting a 4-week series asking the question, why do we gather as a church? And today we're going to talk about gathering for encouragement. Because sometimes we don't realize that we use solitary confinement for dangerous or to discipline criminals. And that was basically the whole thing that's there. So if almost everything we do is rooted in social interaction, then why is it that most Christians aren't engaging? Churches today have plenty of seats for a lot more people. And if we run out of seats, we do another service. Back on 9/11 in 2001, this nation was attacked. I believe it was on a Monday. Was it Tuesday? By Sunday, churches were overflowing. People were praying to God. Lives were rearranged and disrupted. And so, if what I need is to interact with one another, so if I need to be with someone to interact with my mental state, my physical state, my emotional state, and my spiritual state, then if I'm not here in church, and people are going to get mad at me, but there are some people that can't make it. I understand that. But there's a lot of people who can make it who don't make it. And then they're wondering why mentally something's wrong. They're wondering why socially they have no friends. They wonder why physically they're having all kinds of issues. And then they wonder why spiritually they're drained. And the reason is this. It is a simple formula. Get your butt in church. God doesn't use the word but, except as a connector. And I think maybe that's what we need is a connection to your butt, because we got plenty of seats that we can do that with. But one of the things that I believe that gathering together is powerful. It really is. Let me say this to you. If you get up in the morning and everything is collapsing all around you, and you say, I just don't feel like going to church today, come anyway. Come anyway. I'll guarantee you that something will change your attitude if you'll let it. It's called the Holy Spirit. God is trying to tell us that we need to gather. And may I say this to you? I believe that gathering together is powerful. But I also believe it's biblical. And we'll show you as we get along. So, let's go. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 and 25. And let us watch out for one another to provoke love and good works, not neglecting to gather together as some are in the habit of doing. Rather, but encouraging each other, and all the more as you see the day approaching. Now, in the NIV, it doesn't use the word provoke. In the NIV, it uses the word spur. And here's what it says. And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. It says, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. So what does it say? Let me tell you what it says. That when we gather together, we are encouraging one another to love and good works. I hear people all the time say, nobody loves me. Wrong. There's someone that loved you unconditionally. His name is Jesus. And let me say this to you. God, the Father who created everything there was. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Word it says that he who he has made, he has also conformed or predestined us to be in the likeness of Jesus. May I say this to you, and I believe this with all my heart. Some people say, well, do you believe in predestination? You're Baptist. And I say, absolutely, I do. I do believe in predestination, but not the predestination that they believe in, that God has already predestined certain people to hell and certain people to heaven. God himself said that everyone that ever comes into creation, and I'm not talking about even if it's a child or a fertilized egg that doesn't make it, that is still a human being, has life. How do I know? The Bible tells me so. When John the Baptist came into the presence, of Jesus, or Mary, who was just now pregnant, came into the presence of Elizabeth, who was 6 months pregnant with John the Baptist. Baby in the womb. Some people say, okay, fetus, call it whatever you want to call it. It's life. How do I know? Because the Bible said that when John in the womb came into the presence of Jesus, honey, his mama felt some kicking going on. The Bible says that child began to leap. Now, I don't know about you. I have never given birth to a child. But I've been around to feel the baby starting to kick. And there are sometimes you can watch a woman who is pregnant and you can start seeing feet. It's like that baby's doing a happy dance. You know? That's why I don't recommend playing really loud music that's got a real good beat, because you may get a child that's got a good rhythm before they're even born. But what do I mean? I mean this. It was God's will that every one of us go to heaven. He made heaven big enough for all of us. Hell was only made for Satan and the fallen angels. That's it. It was never meant for any person to ever go there. So what does it mean to provoke each other to good works, or to spur one another to good works and to love? Let me share my story. My mom and my dad, in my early years of my life, they didn't go to church. My mom worked in it was called an inn, where they had food. They had the best chicken in town, but it was also a bar. Okay? And we lived either right behind the bar or right down the alley from the bar where my mom would work. All of a sudden, a guy across the street was called to preach. And so he invited my dad to come to church. And my mom, she'd been sending us to anybody that would come and pick us up. You know, it's like, you're inviting him to go to church? Yeah, I'll send you, you know, and we'll go. So anyway, my dad got saved, and so we started walking across the Black Street Bridge to go to church. It didn't matter if it was snowing or raining. We went to church. We were like the mailman. We were going to church. So I was in the 6th grade, and I was really sick. They kept throwing me out of school because I was running a fever. They couldn't find out what was wrong with it. Eventually, they found out it was an infection that had basically got into my insides. I ended up with appendicitis and some other problems later on, all because of this. So I had my appendix taken out. So I had my appendix taken out, and my mom wouldn't let me go to church Saturday night when I got out of the hospital on Friday. And I didn't like that. I wanted to go to church. Why? Because we had church on Saturday night. We had church on Wednesday night. We had youth meeting on Thursday night. We had a visitation on Tuesday. And as a kid, I went. Saturday, we might have done something. Sunday, we were spending time all over the place. It just grew up that way. And that's all I knew. But can I tell you something? I made some of the best friends for life in that church. I did. I learned how much people love you when you're hurting. from that church. So, what exactly does it mean to spur one another on towards love and good deeds? In Acts chapter 15 and verse number 39, and I don't know if I put it up there for you. Okay, but let me just share with you. Acts chapter 15, verse 39, it's all about Paul and a gentleman by the name of Barnabas. Paul and Barnabas were basically, Barnabas was with Paul, and they went out on a missionary journey. Okay? Paul got upset with Barnabas. He also got upset with John Mark. Paul was a very devoted individual, but he also had a temper. So he got upset. He's getting ready to go out on the next missionary journey. And so they come up and he says, okay, we've come back, we've reported and everything, we're ready to go out to the next one. And they say, okay, let's go get Barnabas. He says, no way. I'm not taking him. He left us. Or, John Mark. I'm not taking John Mark with us. And Barnabas says, why not? Why aren't you taking John Mark with us? He left us. He went back home. Well, I believe his father was dying, and so he was going back home to be there with that. No, let the dead bury their dead. Do whatever, you know. You're supposed to be with us, for, getting out here and spreading the gospel and doing all this stuff. And so they really got into a huge argument over this. So much that Paul now ended up bringing Silas with him. Barnabas ended up going and taking John Mark with him. Later on, when Paul is in Rome, knowing that he's going to die, he writes about John Mark. He had changed his attitude. He said, he's a good man. Take him with you. Stay with him. When we talk about spurring someone on, if you ever get Strong's Concordance, okay, which is really great. If you ever really want to look up a word in the Bible, get Strong's Concordance and look up the word. And here's what it says in Strong's Concordance about spur. It says incitement to good. Inciting someone to do good, to spur. But let me say this, there's a bad side to it too. There is, or dispute in anger. So when you spur someone on, he doesn't just stop and say, okay, hey, here's what you need to do. You need to spur people on. Because let me say this, a lot of times in church what we do is we don't spur people on to good works and love. What we do is spur people on to contention and disagreements. I don't like the color of the pews. I don't like the way that the music sounds. I don't like the way that preacher stands up there with shirts with stuff on. He doesn't have a suit and tie on. He's got on sneakers and white socks. What is this dude? You know, I don't like the way he talks. I don't like the way he looks. He's too old. He's too young. He's got glasses, you know. He doesn't have much hair. I want somebody that's younger with more vibrant. And so we get these younger guys that speak like this. And oh God. Or tell you. Or we've got to have a light show. We've got to have fog. It's got to be entertaining. We've got to have this. We've got to have that. I get people all the time, I'm looking for a church. What are you looking for? Well, I want a church that's got this program and this program and this program. And I'll say, okay, why are you looking for that? Well, because I need a church that's good. I believe that God's really wanting me to get in there. Okay, why don't you start it? Duh, me start it? God's not calling me to do it. He must be doing something in your life that evidently he's trying to spur you on to do something and you're just not catching the spurs. I think every once in a while that as a pastor, I need to start getting my cowboy boots on and putting spurs and make a horse run down the aisle. Just every once in a while, just kicking like this, you know, as you just kind of move people. But sometimes it's like, I know, how many of y'all seen the cowboy with riding the horse with spurs? Right? When that horse feels that spur, that horse moves. God is trying to spur us on. Not to contention and disagreement, but rather to good works. He's trying to motivate us to do these things. And so what we need to do is, let me say this. If we don't spur you on, God doesn't spur you on, you know what you're going to get? Have you ever been around a pond where there's no drainage and the sun is beating down on it? What happens to that pond? It becomes stagnant, right? What does it start smelling like? It starts smelling like a mess, right? Christians, when you aren't being spurred on, you're becoming stagnant and you start smelling like a mess. They're called stinking Christians. Lost people a lot of time will say, you're a stinking Christian. And I have to tell them, no, I'm not. I smell pretty good. You just really need to come get a whiff of what I've got. You know, because if you get a whiff of what I got, I think you'll find out it smells pretty good. But sometimes we need to understand that it is easy, ladies and gentlemen, when you get by yourself, it gets dangerous to be alone. Because when you're alone, Satan will attack you. A lion doesn't attack the whole herd. A lion picks outliers. And let me say this. This is why, if you miss 2 weeks in this church, this is why you get a letter or a card from us. Because after 2 weeks, you've got 1 foot traveling in the wrong direction. How do I know? Been there, done it. And sometimes that 2 weeks became 2 years. And I don't want you to make the same mistake that I made. That's why sometimes you may say, well, Pastor, I really wish you would quit aggravating me with those letters. I wish you would quit aggravating me with those notes, because I know I'm missing. I know I'm not there. Okay, then why don't you do something about it? You know, it's to do that. So what's the next thing? The next thing is when you come here, when we start talking about encouragement, how many times in your Christian walk have you been hit with something so bad you just wanted to throw your hands up and quit? And just say, I give up. There's nothing I can do. I've prayed. I've gone to church. I've paid my tithes. I've read my Bible. I've got in every Bible study that's in the church. I've been at every service. I've been to every event. I've been to all of it. And it hasn't done a bit of good. As a matter of fact, my life has just gotten worse. Really? Let me ask you this question. How do you get through those moments? Have you ever tried getting through those moments by yourself? What happened? Did you get better? It's like this. When you get sick, don't you go to the doctor? Right? Or do you go to Google and start Googling and start self-diagnosing? And then all of a sudden you're self-diagnosing, and the next thing you know, you're feeling worse than before. Right? And then you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, how long have you been in this condition? A couple of weeks. There is no way that infection could have been 2 weeks. This looks like an infection for about 2 months. Well, you got to understand, Doc, I'm old, and I'm losing sight of time, or track of time. So, days run into weeks, and weeks run into months. It could be 2 years. I don't know. I just know it's there. But what happens when we self-diagnose? It doesn't work. That doctor has gone to school in order to practice on you. Okay? They're not God. They're practitioners, and they're still practicing. But they're doing the best they can with the knowledge that they have. Okay? So if I want to go to somebody that has the best knowledge for what's ailing me, I think I would want to go to God. Because he created me. And I think he knows better what's wrong with me and what needs to be fixed. So instead of giving up, I need to get closer. Instead of getting further away. It's like when it gets cold outside. I'm sorry, but you don't turn on the air conditioner. You turn on the heat. And sooner or later, you want to turn it up a little bit more because you want to get a little bit warmer. So please understand that the closer you get to God, sometimes the heat starts rising. And Satan does his best to try to put the heat on you. But can I tell you something? God can make it just right, as he always does. Listen, I need to tell you something. If you're here this morning and you feel like giving up, don't. You're not alone. You're here. You've got people with you. David knew something about adversity. And in Psalms chapter 30 and verse number 5, he says, weeping may remain for a night, but joy comes in the morning. He says, for his anger lasts only for a moment, but his favor a lifetime. But the last part of that says, weeping may stay overnight, but there's joy in the morning. And let me tell you something. God's still waking us up. It's not nighttime right now. It's daytime. But we need to understand that we gather together and listen. I know people say this to me all the time. And they get mad at me all the time. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm too old to change because I know I'm right. And do you know what happens to old people who know that they are right? They aren't changing just because you've got a newfangled idea. We are set in our ways. But we're set because we've proven this. I hear people all the time say, I don't feel like coming to church. And I've told you. I told you. I'll continue to tell you. Come anyway. You don't understand. I'll hinder the Spirit. No, you won't. You don't understand I'm in a rut. So what? Tell me who isn't. You want to know how many times I get up on Sunday morning and say, I don't want to come here? Not many, if any. Because you want to know why? I love it here. Whether it's 4 people or 40 people, whether it's 5 or 500, it doesn't matter. Because we're here. And as long as there's 2 of us, God said he would be in the midst. So God doesn't come just based on a numerical number or a formula in order to show up. He shows up because our desire is for him to show up. And we bring him with us. We need to understand. When we were talking about the book of Hebrews, when we were reading there, it said, don't be like some people who are now in the habit, making it a habit not to come to church or not to gather. Some people will say, oh, you just don't understand. I am so busy right now. Busy with what? I mean, honestly, think about it for a minute. When you get to heaven, how many groceries are you going to buy? When you get to heaven, how many beaches are you going to lay on? When you get to heaven, how many vacations are you going to take? Now, I'm not saying don't take vacation. I take vacations. I love vacation, okay? But what I'm saying is just because you want to do a staycation, and that's what most people are doing now. They're staying at home. That's their vacation. And now, if you continue to do this, God says you're going to make a habit of it. He's not saying, I'm not saying this, he's saying that. And it is my obligation to warn you about this because this is what's going to happen. Have you ever noticed those people that are late for work? Have you ever noticed those people that are early to show up? Have you ever noticed those people that are never late for dinner? Why? Because they've made it a habit that is important to show up. When you don't show up, you're showing that it's not important. And let me say this to you. I'm not trying to be mean and nasty. I'm trying to say this. That when you don't, Satan is going to come after you. And he's going to rock your boat. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to fall into this point of being disheartened, being disenchanted, feeling like nobody loves you, feeling like nobody cares, feeling like God has forsaken you. And God gave you a promise that he'd never leave you. But here's what happens. So many times. Pastor, I've been sick for 3 weeks. And I've been praying to God and nothing's changing. Okay, so why don't you call me and tell me that you were sick? Why don't you send out a message so that the rest of us could pray with you instead of praying by yourself? I believe he said that if any two of you would agree as touching any one thing, and you ask it in his name, it shall be done. Have you ever figured out sometimes that the only reason you're not getting it is because you're the only one praying for it? I mean, honestly. He's asked us to pray together. Bind together. Husband and wife. Praying together for something. And sometimes we don't. What do? We give up. There is the word translated from the Greek is actually a word. It's called ethos, ethos. And if you go and look it up, ethos actually is a word also used in the English today. And it's like someone, the definition of it, when they give it in the term, it basically is someone who is very well versed in the subject matter of what they're doing. And so when he's talking about this habit means you're very well versed in avoiding church. I don't know about y'all, but I don't think that's something I want to be very well versed in. It's like making it a custom. I started going back and started looking at some people. They haven't been here for years. And I've talked to them. I said, well, where are you going? I'm not going anywhere. I just don't have time right now. Hold on a minute. You don't have time? Then why are you complaining that you're always sick? Or, I love this. I love this. Social media is absolutely the most phenomenal, fantastic, factual thing ever written. I'm sick, and I'll put it on Facebook. I need everybody to pray for me. Don't ask me to do that. If I haven't seen you in 2 years. I'm going to ask God to do whatever God needs to do to get your butt back where you need to be. So you may not want to ask me to pray for you. You say, well, you don't have compassion. No, I do have compassion. You want to know why? That I'm adamant about that? Because I've been out of church. And I've seen what it can happen to my life. And the mess that it can make. And that's why I pray to people. God put them where they have to make a decision to move to you rather than away from you. Because the further they keep moving away, in that few years that I was in the service, I've told you, I am not proud of who I was. Not at all. And that's why I do not speak of it very often. It's a part of my life that I served my country, but I didn't serve my God. And I made a bunch of mistakes and almost lost everything. But when I gave my life back to God and said, hold on a minute, I have been blessed beyond measure, that I would never turn back again. And that's why I am who I am. We gather together because that's who we are. I hear people say, well, the church is universal. It's all over the place. Let it be. Yes, the church is universal. It's everywhere. I understand that. But there's also a thing called local congregations. That is what he set it up to be. Local groups of believers getting together, lifting each other up to be able to take the message to those that they come in contact with. When adversity comes to our doorstep, that's why we gather together. Not we stay away because I'm being bombarded. That's when I need to really be here more. I need to be here more when everything's going wrong. Not, okay, when I get my life straight, I'll come back to church. You ain't showing up. Because you're never going to get your life straight. Okay? If you're trying to get your life straight, it is an impossible task. You cannot do it. The only one that can get your life straight is God. And that's by giving your life to Jesus. And putting it there. So, what do? We're also, when we're confused, frustrated, and angry, we need to be here. We need to be here. So, what do I say? A lot of churches, and I struggle with this, okay? Because the only time people get together is when they have church. And that's not when he's asking us to get together. In the scriptures, they got together daily in one another's houses. And that's why I keep saying, open your house up to other people. You don't have to invite 28 people. You don't have to invite the whole church. Okay? And if you don't invite me, I'm not going to get mad and say, well, I'm not in their clique. Well, you may not be in mine either. Because I may not invite you to my house. But it isn't who gets chosen to go to what house. It's you choose, hey, let's get together and let's just study. We got a group at our house on Thursday night. We've been meeting for 3 months, you know. We get together as good Baptists. We eat food, and then we eat the word. You know, I told the Hispanic church yesterday, I said, I'm changing you guys into Spanish, into Hispanic people that are going to be Baptists. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, every time you all get together, you got to eat. And they said, oh yeah, food good. And I said, yeah, this food's good too, yeah. It's the best. But here we go. Let me finish real quick. What do we need to do? We need to do it more, not less. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the world. There are people, kids, that think that they're cats. Seriously, I believe it was in the city of Hamilton. They had to put a litter box. Fairfield. In Fairfield, they had to put a school in the elementary school. They put a litter box in the restroom for a child that wanted to be identified as a cat. And they said, you're not a cat. And that kid kept saying, no, I'm a cat. And let me say this to you. If you keep telling yourself that you're a cat, eventually you're going to convince yourself you're a cat. Okay? Didn't your mom and dad ever tell you you can be whatever you want to be? Remember that old saying? You can be whatever you want to be when you grow up. Well, now they want to be cats or dogs or whatever. But the more you keep thinking about this and fixating on this one thing, the more likely you're going to be that. Now, all of a sudden, you decide, you know what? I don't like being a cat because this kid over here is a dog. And dogs don't like cats. And I'm always being chased by the dog. I'm changing. I'm now going to be a dog. We get so mixed up. But what we need to understand that God has made us, ladies and gentlemen, There is something that people have not understood. And I've shared that this multitudes of times, and that is this. God said, when he made Adam, this is very good. This is awesome. I have now made someone that I can communicate with, I can share with, because why? He's made in my image. He's made in the image of God. We can relate to one another. And I love it. I love as soon as the sun comes up in the morning, I can go down there because Adam is waking up. And the first thing in the morning that Adam can do is have a conversation with me. But the first thing in the morning, I could have a conversation with Adam. I've been waiting all night for this. Just for this moment. And I'm going to walk and talk with him in the cool of the day, and we're going to sit there and we're going to talk with one another till nighttime. Nighttime, I'll go back to heaven. Adam will go to sleep, and I'll see you tomorrow. But one day, God looked at Adam. I don't know how long this had been. The Bible doesn't give us dates. But somewhere, God saw something missing. I don't know what kind of dream Adam had that night and what was going on. But something happened in the demeanor of Adam. Because God looked at him and he said, this is not good. The very first thing that God ever said was not good. This is not good for Adam to be by himself. I understand he's Lord of over all the creation, and his job is to tend to all of this stuff for me. But it's not good because he's still lonely. He's still lonely. And God says, I've got to remedy this situation. The Bible tells us he caused a deep sleep to fall over Adam. He took his bone and made woman. And he said, what are you going to call her? Most famous thing that Adam ever said, I'm going to call her Whoa Man. She was more beautiful than anything he had ever seen. And he said, there, Adam. She is flesh of your flesh, bone of your bones. Now you take care of her. And you love her like I love you. God made us to fellowship with one another. He never made anybody to go through life by themselves. When I hear people say, I don't need anybody else, may I say this to you. You may not like what I'm going to say, but you're a liar. Because God is the truth. And God says it is not good for man to be alone. That's a fact. Because he said it. So what do we need to do? I finish with these things. Why is it important for people to get into church right now? Matthew chapter 24, verses 10 through 13. Every day, ladies and gentlemen, is a day closer to Jesus coming back. Every day is a day closer to you're going to have to face death. Here's what he says. In Matthew chapter 24, he's beginning to talk about the end and what's going to happen. Then many will fall away. You going to tell me there isn't a falling away? 2 to 3 years ago, we were right around 100 people. Every Sunday, we're pressing 50. Did all 100 people die? No. Did they go to other churches? No. Where are they at? I have no clue. The only ones that I know is the people that have stayed where they're at. Others have moved and they've gone on. They've changed their numbers. I can't reach them. I don't know where they went. They never told me. A person that's been coming to our church, she lives up in Troy and comes down here. I saw a post that she put today. She said, it's amazing that, and it is, that we have about 500 to 600 people in our rolls that have been here. And she says, it's amazing that when I come there, that I see 40 to 50. Where's the other 450 to 550 people? Look at what it said. It said, many will fall away. Has this happened? Is there a falling away? Yeah, there is. Betrayed one another. You don't think that there is betrayal among the Christians today? There is so much infighting among Christians that is unreal. No, we're the right church. We're the right church. No, you need to do it this way. You need to do it that way. I'm not going to that church because I don't like the way that those people dress. We were talking, and someone was talking that their church didn't want them to use this bus anymore because the people that they were putting on the bus were dirty, homeless people. And they didn't want to get in the bus and ride in that bus to church that's brought dirty, homeless people. And I thought, Lord, don't they need help? You know, they go back to that verse. I wasn't finished. And he says, and they hate one another. Honestly, while I was on vacation, you all saw the Facebook post from someone that just hated me for being on vacation and just ripping me apart. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't be posting these things. It was not posting how boastful I am. It's how blessed I am that God has done things for me. And you want to know why he's blessed me? Because I've been faithful. And I don't do this boasting, but I guarantee you, sit down with me and my wife and do our bills. Okay? And I'll guarantee you the very first thing that comes in is here goes the money to the church before the bills get paid. And may I say this? We always find money to pay the bills. Why? Because he says, if you'll be faithful, I'll be faithful. And I've learned a long time. Okay. Then many will fall, they fall away, they'll hate each other. Verse number 11. Tell me this isn't happening. Flip it real quick. Will you guys? Many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. How many people today have no clue what it means to accept Christ as your personal Savior? They think that they got to do a program, a process. I'm sorry. I didn't find the Philippian jailer going through a 28-week discipleship thing before he could get saved. What I found out was that, he sat there and Paul led him to the Lord. And then he said, okay, I'm taking you home. I'll clean you up. We'll feed you. And I need you to tell the same message to my family. And they all did. And it was after midnight. It's in early morning. And what did they do? They all went out and got baptized. The Ethiopian eunuch was driving down the road. And then all of a sudden, Philip comes in. He says, do you understand what you're reading? He says, how can I understand what I'm reading when there's nobody here to explain it to me? And he began explaining it to him. They're driving down the road. The Ethiopian eunuch says, hey, there's a body of water. He says, well, what hinders me from being saved? And he says, do you believe? He says, yes, I believe. So sometimes we're trying to do this whole process of saying, the only way you can get baptized is you've got to go through 78 weeks of this kind of training to make sure you know what you're doing. And I'm telling you right now, most of us had no clue what we did when we got saved and baptized. We don't know. But what does he say? Verse 12. Okay, and he says, look at this. Because lawlessness will multiply and the love of many will grow cold. You tell me, how many people are cold today? I mean, seriously. Some elderly person is getting beat up by 28 hoods. And what's everybody doing? They all got their phone out recording it. While that person is laying there bleeding and dying, everybody's got it on their phone to see how many views they're going to get on YouTube or TikTok or Chit Chat or whatever. Instead of getting in there and helping that person out. Well, if I help them out, then the next thing I know, I'm going to jail and I'm going to be put in jail for all of this stuff. It is stupidity how much we have gone to lawlessness, because now laws protect not the innocent, it protects the guilty. It isn't innocent until proven guilty, it's guilty until proven innocent. I'm sorry. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. Ladies and gentlemen, we got an endurance. And we need to understand something. God didn't save us to let us sit. He saved us to let us meet with one another, encourage one another, to love one another. And if we're not doing what we're asked to do. He says, how do I know that you're a Christian? By your love. Not by your money, not by your attendance, not by how many people that you've led to me, by your love. Do you love one another?